Time now for our first take primetime players. Today is number 13. Before the break, we asked you this trivia question. Since the 2015-2016 season, which player leads the NBA with 1.9 steals per game? Here's your answer.
Next up on our first take NBA primetime players ranking is Paul George.
George creates space and then knocks down the three, and the Clippers lead by a dozen.
The winner of the 2012-13 NBA Most Improved Player Award, George is also a six-time All-Star. In 2018-19, George led the NBA in steals per game and was named to the NBA All-Defensive First Team.
On the basketball, and it's thrown away. They lead in steals. This guy right there leads the NBA.
Player number 13, Clippers forward, Paul George.
All right, let's get it. Jalen Rose joining us now. But Stephen A., I will start with you here first. Has Paul George underachieved since leaving the Pacers?
I believe he has, and that's a hard thing for me to say because I love him as a player and a person. I think that he's definitely a star in this league. But you know what? I would say the same about him as I would say about Russell Westbrook. Ever since I think Russell Westbrook's a superstar. But ever since Kevin Durant left Oklahoma City, he hasn't been out of the first round. You got Paul George there. You're not out of the first round, Paul George. Obviously, we didn't anticipate that that would be the case this year with the Los Angeles Clippers. We all had them at the very least going to the Western Conference Finals, but Paul George is a star in this league. Obviously, when he went against LeBron in Miami, he got to the conference finals, and obviously he came up short, and there's no shame in coming up short to LeBron. Then he had that nasty injury in the summer games, and that derailed him, and then he came back. You got to give him credit for that. But I'm just looking at a guy that's a star, that's a two-way player as a star, and he's never been in an NBA Finals. No shame in it when you consider the fact that he's been to the conference finals. But when I think about the star that is Paul George and the manner in which we've talked about him, certainly when he paired with Russell Westbrook, I did not expect him to go home in the first round and get put to bed by Damian Lillard. But that's exactly what happened, and that's the only reason that I say that.
Paul George is not underachieved. Look, I don't think anyone looks at Paul George and goes, that's the best player on a championship team. If you have Paul George, you need at least one other guy at least as good as him. He's great. He's a great number two on a championship team, which, by the way, he is right now, but the season was interrupted. And had these playoffs been underway or had they concluded when they're supposed to conclude, if that was possible, then people wouldn't be saying that Paul George is underachieving, like you, Stephen A., because he would have just chipped up or come close to it because now he's got Kawhi as a running mate, as a running partner. Look, I love Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook is maybe my favorite player in the NBA because he goes all out all the time. But he has not had ultimate success in the playoffs in spite of being on some great teams, having great teammates. And when you look at who Paul George has had replaced before he got to the Clippers, he replaced Kevin Durant. No one's out here talking about Paul George is better than Kevin Durant. He's a version of Durant that's not quite as good. There's nothing wrong with that. Durant's one of the greatest players of all time. Paul George is merely a perennial all-star who, in his better seasons, challenges for MVP. And when has that happened, Stephen A.? Since he left Indiana. He went last year, not this past season, not this season, but last season, 28, 8 and 4, leading the league with 2.2 steals a game. 28, 8 and 4, and until he got banged up, he was discussed as an MVP candidate. He had never been discussed as an MVP candidate before. I'm not going to put too much on him about not taking his team deeper into the playoffs. I don't see him as the alpha on a championship team. I see him as the number two or as a 1A or 1B on a championship team. But if anything, the estimation of Paul George as a player has increased since he left Indiana and got to OKC and now to the Clippers, where I favored him to win a championship this year.
Stephen A., Paul George has come up since he left the Indiana Pacers. The Oklahoma City Thunder, however, they did underachieve. At some point in your first rookie contract, as a franchise, you need to designate if your best player can actually be the best player on a championship caliber team. And what ends up happening at some point in your career, Paul George and Anthony Davis realized I can't be the best player here and win a championship, so I'm going to go run with LeBron in LA. I'm going to run with Russ in OKC. I'm going to run with Kawhi in Los Angeles. Since leaving Indiana, as Max mentioned, he became one of the better players in the game to the point where he was top 3 in the MVP conversation. That then created a level of value to the point that allowed him to get traded to the Clippers for 4 first-round picks. Now he gets a chance to play in his hometown state with Kawhi Leonard on a championship contending team and be coached by Doc Rivers and gets a chance to be close to the be close to the great Jerry West. Paul George has come up since he's left Indiana Pacers.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.